The crystal chandeliers sparkled above the Manhattan Charity Gala as Cassandra's laugh cut through the elegant murmur of conversation. "Oh, Emily, still shopping at discount stores, I see." Cassandra's voice dripped with false sweetness as heads turned. Emily's cheeks flushed, but her voice remained steady. "I believe in living within my means, Cassandra." "Living within your means?" Cassandra's laughter grew louder. "Darling, some of us actually have means to live within." Emily's hands trembled slightly, but she lifted her chin with quiet dignity. "Imagine choosing to be a nurse when you could have a real career," Cassandra announced to the gathering crowd. Uncomfortable murmurs rippled through the crowd as guests exchanged glances. "Nursing isn't just a job, Cassandra. It's about serving others, finding purpose in helping people heal." "How quaint. Tell me, Emily, do your patients pay your rent with gratitude?" Grace stepped forward, her eyes flashing with protective anger. "That's enough, Cassandra." "Oh, and here's the cavalry. Another noble nurse coming to the rescue." Grace leaned close to Emily. "One day she's going to discover who you really are." Emily shook her head slowly. "I hope she never has to find out, Grace." As the evening wound down, Emily stood alone, processing the public humiliation. Cassandra basked in her perceived victory, Robert's discomfort growing more obvious. Emily gathered her simple coat, her dignity intact despite the evening's cruelty. As Emily stepped onto the quiet street, her phone began to ring insistently. The caller ID made her pause. It was a number that could change everything. "Hello," Emily answered, unaware that this call would transform everything she thought she knew about her future. The voice on the other end would soon make Cassandra's cruel words seem like distant whispers. Before we continue Emily's incredible journey, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let's connect. And if you're curious to see how this story unfolds, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more heartwarming tales that remind us never to judge by appearances. The morning sun filtered through Emily's modest Queens apartment as her alarm clock buzzed at 5:30 a.m. She stretched in her simple bed, grateful for another day to serve others. Her small bedroom reflected her humble lifestyle. Clean but basic furniture, no luxuries, just the essentials. The walls were bare except for a single photo of her late grandmother, whose gentle smile seemed to watch over Emily's quiet morning routine. Despite her modest circumstances, Emily radiated contentment as she prepared to face another day of healing and helping those in need. Emily shuffled to her tiny kitchen, preparing instant coffee and toast for breakfast. The cramped space held only the necessities: a small refrigerator covered with thank you cards from patients, a basic coffee maker, and mismatched dishes. Despite its simplicity, the kitchen felt warm and lived in, filled with the contentment of someone who had found peace in less. She read one of the patient cards while waiting for her coffee. "Thank you for holding my hand during the scariest night of my life." These moments reminded her why she chose this path over material wealth. In her small bathroom, Emily carefully hand-washed her nurse uniform, ensuring every stain was removed. She took pride in her appearance at work, even though money was tight. The ritual of preparing her uniform each morning reminded her of her purpose: to bring comfort and healing to those who needed it most. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "True wealth comes from serving others with a pure heart." Emily smiled, understanding those words more deeply each day. Dressed in her crisp white uniform, Emily walked the 3 blocks to the bus stop through her working-class neighborhood. She smiled and waved to neighbors, Mrs. Rodriguez tending her small garden, and Mr. Chin opening his corner store. These simple interactions filled her heart with genuine joy, reminding her that wealth couldn't buy the connections that truly mattered. "Morning, Emily," called Mrs. Rodriguez. "You're an angel, dear." This community had embraced her with open arms, seeing the generous heart within. The bus ride to St. Mary's Hospital was crowded with other working people beginning their day. Emily stood quietly, reading a worn paperback book, completely at peace with her circumstances. Around her, construction workers, teachers, and fellow healthcare workers shared the same humble means of transportation. She offered her seat to an elderly man with a warm smile, embodying the grace that defined her character. These fellow commuters represented the backbone of society, hardworking people who found meaning in honest labor. Emily entered the familiar lobby of St. Mary's Hospital, her second home for the past 3 years. The aged but clean facility served the community with dedication, and Emily felt honored to be part of its mission. She greeted colleagues with warm smiles as she badge swiped in. This hospital might not have the gleaming marble of prestigious medical centers, but it possessed something more valuable, a heart for healing that extended far beyond medicine into genuine human compassion and community care. Throughout the morning, Emily moved through the hospital wards with practiced grace. Patients' faces lit up when they saw her approaching. She was beloved for her gentle touch and genuine concern for their well-being. Whether adjusting pillows, administering medication, or simply listening to worried families, Emily brought an extraordinary level of compassion to her work. Her colleagues often remarked that she had a gift for making people feel truly cared for, as if each patient was the most important person in the world. Grace watched Emily work with growing admiration and puzzlement. As Emily's closest friend at the hospital, Grace marveled at how Emily always seemed so content despite her apparent financial struggles. There was something about Emily's demeanor, a quiet confidence and inner peace that didn't quite match her modest circumstances. Grace had noticed little things over the years that didn't add up, but Emily deflected personal questions with such grace that Grace never pressed too hard. During lunch break in the hospital cafeteria, Grace observed Emily's genuine contentment as they shared their simple meals. "You know, I don't know how you do it," Grace said thoughtfully. "You always have this glow about you, this happiness, despite everything being so tight financially. Most people in your situation would be stressed, but you seem, I don't know, at peace." Emily smiled mysteriously, her eyes twinkling with something Grace couldn't quite identify. There was clearly more to her friend's story than met the eye. Just as they finished eating, Emily's phone buzzed. Seeing the caller ID, her expression shifted to one of careful attention. "Excuse me, Grace, I need to take this," she said, stepping away to a private corner. "Hello, Harold," she answered quietly. Grace watched curiously as Emily's body language became more formal, more serious. The conversation lasted several minutes, with Emily nodding and occasionally glancing around to ensure privacy. When Grace asked about the mysterious caller upon Emily's return, Emily simply smiled and changed the subject smoothly. "Some secrets are just too heavy to share," she murmured softly, leaving Grace more intrigued than ever. 6 years earlier, Emily and Robert's laughter filled their cramped studio apartment as they shared takeout Chinese food on their secondhand couch. Despite having little money, they were blissfully happy in those early days of marriage. Wedding photos covered the walls, moments of pure joy captured when love seemed enough to conquer any obstacle. Robert would pull Emily close and whisper, "We may not have much, but we have everything that matters." Those words felt like absolute truth in the golden glow of their newlywed happiness. As months passed, the reality of financial pressure began to wear on them both. Robert spent countless nights hunched over business plans and loan applications, dreaming of the company he wanted to build. Emily worked double shifts at the hospital, her feet aching and her spirit drained, but still believing in their shared future. The apartment that once felt cozy now seemed suffocating, filled with unpaid bills and the growing tension of dreams deferred. Their conversations shifted from hopes and laughter to worried discussions about rent and groceries. "We can't keep living like this, Emily." Robert's voice cracked with frustration as bills covered their small kitchen table. "I'm so close to getting the funding for my business. If we could just tighten the budget a little more." Emily's shoulders sagged with exhaustion. "I'm already working 16-hour days, Robert. I can't give any more." The woman who once saw endless possibility in their humble life now felt trapped by circumstances beyond their control. Money had become the unwelcome third party in their marriage, poisoning every conversation and stealing their joy. 3 years into their marriage, Emily stared at the positive pregnancy test with tears streaming down her face. When she showed Robert, his expression transformed from exhaustion to pure wonder. "We're going to be parents," he whispered, holding her close in their tiny bathroom. For a brief, shining moment, all their financial worries faded away. This baby represented hope, a new chapter, a reason to fight harder for their dreams. They spent that evening planning the nursery in their studio apartment, believing that love would somehow make everything work out perfectly. At 12 weeks, Emily lost the baby. The miscarriage shattered something fundamental in both of them, creating a grief so profound that words became inadequate. Robert held Emily's hand in the sterile hospital room, both of them crying for the future they had imagined so vividly. The loss created an invisible wall between them. Emily retreated into her work, while Robert threw himself even more desperately into his business ventures. They grieved separately, each carrying their pain alone, unable to find their way back to each other through the darkness. In the months following their loss, Robert became obsessed with success, believing that financial security would somehow heal their wounds. He worked 18-hour days, networking, pitching investors, sacrificing sleep and time with Emily in pursuit of the business breakthrough that would solve all their problems. Emily would come home from her shifts to find him still hunched over his laptop, too exhausted to even acknowledge her presence. The man who once made her laugh until her sides hurt had become a stranger driven by ambition and grief. Emily began eating dinner alone most nights, the silence of their apartment broken only by the clicking of Robert's keyboard. She would save him a plate, hoping he might join her, but he rarely looked up from his work. The woman who had once felt so connected to her husband now felt like a ghost in her own home. Their conversations became purely functional: bills, schedules, logistics, while the emotional intimacy that had once defined their relationship slowly withered away like a plant left too long in darkness. 2 years after losing their baby, Emily and Robert sat on opposite ends of their old couch as their lawyer explained the divorce papers. There was no anger, no dramatic fight, just a quiet recognition that they had become two people traveling in different directions. "I still love you," Robert said softly. "I love you too," Emily replied, tears falling silently. But love isn't enough anymore, is it? They had grown into different people, shaped by loss and disappointment into versions of themselves that no longer fit together like pieces of a puzzle. Emily packed her belongings into cardboard boxes while Robert watched from the doorway, both of them moving through the motions of separation like sleepwalkers. She took only what she truly needed: clothes, a few books, the photo of her grandmother that had always given her strength. The wedding photos remained on the walls. Neither of them had the heart to take them down. "I want you to be happy, Em," Robert said as she taped the final box. "I want that for you too," she replied, meaning every word despite her broken heart. On Emily's final day in the apartment they had shared, her phone rang with a call that would change everything. She had just signed the last of the divorce papers when a lawyer's voice informed her of an unexpected inheritance from her grandmother's estate. As the lawyer explained the substantial sum involved, Emily glanced at Robert, who was absorbed in his own legal documents, completely unaware of the conversation that was unfolding. Something in Emily's heart told her to keep this information to herself. Perhaps it was pride, perhaps intuition, but she quietly stepped into the hallway to finish the call. This secret would become the foundation of an entirely new chapter in her life, one that Robert would never know about. 2 years after the divorce, Robert had transformed into the successful businessman he had always dreamed of becoming. His company had flourished, bringing him the financial security that had eluded him during his marriage to Emily. As he stood at the entrance of Riverside Elementary, adjusting his expensive tie, he radiated the confidence of a man who had finally achieved his goals. The struggling entrepreneur who once counted pennies for takeout had become someone who commanded boardrooms and drove luxury cars. Today, he was introducing his new world to the most important part of his life. Cassandra emerged from Robert's Mercedes like a vision from a magazine cover. Everything about her screamed wealth and sophistication, From her perfectly styled blonde hair to her designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Her diamond earrings caught the afternoon sunlight as she smoothed her dress with manicured hands adorned with expensive rings. She moved with the practiced grace of someone accustomed to being the center of attention, her piercing green eyes surveying the modest school environment with barely concealed superiority. This was a woman who had never known financial struggle. 8-year-old Lily bounded toward them across the school courtyard, her backpack bouncing with each enthusiastic step. Her curly blonde hair was slightly disheveled from a day of playground adventures, and her school uniform bore the happy evidence of childhood, a small grass stain on her knee and marker on her fingers from art class. "Daddy!" she called out joyfully, throwing her arms around Robert's legs. Despite all his success, this moment with his daughter remained the brightest part of Robert's day. Lily's innocent excitement reminded him of what truly mattered beyond business deals and bank accounts. Robert knelt down to Lily's level, his business demeanor softening into pure paternal love. "Lily, sweetheart, I want you to meet someone very special," he said gently, glancing up at Cassandra with obvious affection. "This is Cassandra, and she's going to be part of our family soon." Lily studied Cassandra with the frank curiosity that only children possess, taking in her glamorous appearance with wide-eyed wonder. The contrast between the child's innocent simplicity and Cassandra's polished sophistication was striking, representing two very different worlds about to collide. Cassandra crouched down carefully, mindful of her expensive dress, and extended a perfectly manicured hand to Lily. "Hello, darling," she said with a smile that was beautiful but somehow didn't quite reach her eyes. "I've heard so many wonderful things about you." Her voice carried the cultured tones of someone educated in the finest schools, every word precisely articulated. While her words were kind, there was something calculated about the interaction, as if she was performing rather than genuinely connecting. Lily, with the intuitive wisdom of childhood, seemed to sense this subtle disconnect. Across the courtyard, Emily approached the school building wearing her simple nurse uniform and carrying a basic tote bag filled with supplies for her volunteer work in the school's health office. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her comfortable shoes showed the wear of someone who spent long hours on her feet caring for others. Despite her modest appearance, she moved with quiet confidence and purpose. Several children waved enthusiastically when they saw her, evidence of the genuine connection she had formed through her volunteer service at the school. Cassandra's expression shifted the moment she spotted Emily. Her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the flash of disdain that crossed her features as she took in Emily's simple uniform and practical appearance. Robert followed her gaze and visibly tensed, his successful businessman facade cracking slightly as he faced the reality of his two worlds colliding. The woman he had once loved and the woman he now planned to marry were about to meet for the first time, and the contrast between them couldn't have been more stark. Emily represented his humble past, while Cassandra embodied his affluent present. Emily approached with her characteristic warm smile, genuinely pleased to see Robert and curious about the elegant woman beside him. "Hello, Robert," she said kindly, her voice carrying no trace of bitterness despite their painful history. "It's good to see you." Her grace and genuine warmth stood in sharp contrast to Cassandra's cold assessment. While Emily radiated natural beauty that came from inner peace and purpose, Cassandra's beauty was more manufactured, expensive but somehow hollow. The difference between them was immediately apparent to anyone watching. "Cassandra, this is Emily," Robert said awkwardly. "Emily, I'd like you to meet Cassandra, my fiancée." Just then, Lily winced and looked down at her scraped knee from playground activities. Emily immediately knelt down, her nursing instincts kicking in as she gently examined the small wound. "Oh, sweetie, that looks like it stings a bit," Emily said softly, pulling a small bandage from her volunteer bag. Lily smiled up at Emily with instant trust and affection. "You're really nice," Lily said simply. "Will you put the bandage on?" Emily's gentle touch and caring nature immediately won over the little girl. As Emily finished tending to Lily's knee and Robert was distracted helping his daughter gather her things, Cassandra stepped closer to Emily. Her voice dropped to a venomous whisper that only Emily could hear. "I hope you understand your place now," she said with a smile that was pure ice. The words were delivered with such calculated cruelty that Emily felt a chill run down her spine. This beautiful woman clearly saw her as nothing more than an obstacle to be eliminated, and Emily realized that her peaceful volunteer work at the school was about to become much more complicated. In the months following their first encounter, Cassandra made it her mission to establish her superiority over Emily at every possible opportunity. At the annual school fundraising gala, she arrived in a stunning evening gown that cost more than Emily's annual salary, her jewelry sparkling under the chandeliers like captured starlight. She moved through the crowd of wealthy donors with practiced ease, making sure to position herself prominently whenever Emily was nearby. Every gesture, every laugh, every casual mention of her latest shopping trip or vacation was carefully calculated to highlight the vast difference between their social positions. For Cassandra, these events had become a stage for her ongoing performance of dominance. "Oh, this little thing," Cassandra said with false modesty, touching her diamond necklace as a group of mothers admired it. "Robert surprised me with it last week. He said I deserved something beautiful after I helped organize the hospital wing donation." Her voice carried just loud enough for Emily to hear as she quietly served refreshments at the volunteer table. "Some people," Cassandra continued with a meaningful glance toward Emily, "find meaning in small acts of service. But I believe in making a real impact through substantial contributions." The other women nodded approvingly, completely unaware of the cruel subtext beneath Cassandra's seemingly charitable words. Emily continued her volunteer duties with quiet grace, refilling water glasses and ensuring the silent auction items were properly displayed. Despite Cassandra's obvious attempts to humiliate her, Emily refused to let bitterness take root in her heart. She found genuine joy in the small interactions, helping an elderly guest find a comfortable seat, explaining auction items to interested bidders, ensuring everything ran smoothly behind the scenes. While Cassandra commanded attention at the center of the room, Emily worked tirelessly in the background, her contributions invisible but essential. The contrast between their approaches to service was stark. One performed for admiration, the other offered from genuine love. "The villa in Tuscany was absolutely divine," Cassandra announced to her captive audience, her voice carrying across the room. "We had our own private chef, of course, and the infinity pool overlooked the most breathtaking vineyard. Robert spoils me terribly." She paused deliberately as Emily bent to pick up a dropped napkin nearby. "I suppose not everyone can appreciate such luxuries. Some people find satisfaction in simpler pleasures." The words were delivered with a smile that fooled everyone except Emily, who recognized the deliberate cruelty beneath the polished exterior. Each story, each casual mention of wealth, was another small knife thrust designed to remind Emily of her supposedly inferior position. "You're absolutely right, Cassandra," Emily replied with genuine serenity, straightening up with the collected napkins. "I do find great satisfaction in simple pleasures, a patient smile when they're feeling better, a child's laughter, the privilege of serving others during their most vulnerable moments." Her voice held no defensiveness, only quiet confidence in her chosen path. "True wealth comes in many forms, and I feel incredibly rich in the ways that matter most to me." Several guests nodded thoughtfully at Emily's words, recognizing the profound truth in her perspective. Cassandra's smile faltered slightly, frustrated that her verbal attack had been deflected with such grace. At the monthly parent-teacher conference, Cassandra arrived dressed as if attending a board meeting at a Fortune 500 company. Her tailored suit probably cost more than most parents' monthly mortgage payments, and her designer briefcase contained notes written on expensive stationery. She had positioned herself strategically at the head of the conference table, her presence commanding attention before the meeting even began. When discussions turned to fundraising for new playground equipment, Cassandra was quick to volunteer her expertise, in event planning, making subtle digs about the importance of professional presentation when soliciting donations from serious benefactors. Emily sat quietly with the other parents, dressed in a clean but simple blouse and practical pants, taking genuine notes about how to help the children. When the discussion turned to volunteer opportunities, Cassandra's voice took on a patronizing tone. "Of course, we all want help in whatever way we can," she said with a meaningful glance at Emily. "Some of us can contribute financially to make a real difference, while others might prefer to, well, help with more hands-on tasks." The implication was clear. Cassandra saw herself as the important benefactor, while Emily was relegated to menial labor. Other parents shifted uncomfortably, sensing the underlying tension in what should have been a collaborative discussion about their children's welfare. "I was just telling Robert," Cassandra continued, her voice dripping with false concern, "how important it is for children to see adults who've achieved success. It sets such a positive example about what's possible when one applies themselves properly." She paused meaningfully, her gaze settling on Emily. "Of course, not everyone can reach the same heights, and that's perfectly fine. The world needs people willing to do necessary work." The phrase necessary work was delivered with just enough condescension to sting, while maintaining plausible deniability. Emily felt the familiar burn of humiliation, but refused to give Cassandra the satisfaction of a reaction. Instead, focusing on the genuine love she felt for all the children this meeting was meant to serve. After the meeting, as parents gathered their things and prepared to leave, Lily came running from the playground with a scraped elbow, tears in her innocent blue eyes. Without hesitation, she ran straight to Emily, bypassing Cassandra completely. "Emily, Emily, can you fix my hurt arm?" she cried, throwing her uninjured arm around Emily's waist. Emily immediately knelt down, her nursing instincts and natural compassion taking over as she gently examined the scrape. "Oh, sweetheart, that does look like it stings," Emily said softly, pulling a small bandage from her purse. Cassandra watched with barely concealed irritation as her stepdaughter sought comfort from the woman she had been trying so hard to diminish. As Lily skipped away happily with her colorful bandage, proudly showing it to other children, Cassandra approached Emily with a smile that was pure ice. The parking lot was nearly empty now, giving her the privacy she needed for what she was about to say. "You seem to have quite an effect on children," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "But let me make something crystal clear. Lily is MY's daughter now, and I won't have her getting confused about who belongs in her life and who doesn't. People who can't even afford decent clothes have no business influencing a child who deserves so much better." The threat hung in the air between them like poison, and Emily realized that Cassandra's campaign of humiliation was about to escalate into something far more serious. 3 years earlier, Emily sat in stunned silence in her modest apartment as Harold Whitman, the distinguished estate attorney, explained the contents of her grandmother's will. The elderly lawyer's expensive suit seemed out of place in her humble living room, but his kind eyes radiated the same warmth that had characterized her beloved grandmother Margaret. "Your grandmother was quite specific in her instructions, Emily," Harold said gently, sliding the documents across her coffee table. "She wanted you to understand that this inheritance comes with both incredible opportunity and profound responsibility." Emily's hands trembled as she looked at the numbers on the page. $15 million. An amount so vast it seemed like a fictional sum rather than reality. "Your grandmother Margaret was an extraordinary woman," Harold continued, watching Emily clutch a framed photograph of the gentle lady who had raised her after her parents' death. "She lived modestly her entire life, but she invested wisely and saved every penny she could. More importantly, she spent years watching you grow into the compassionate, selfless person you've become." Emily's tears fell freely as she remembered her grandmother's countless lessons about kindness, service, and finding joy in simple pleasures. "She always said that money without purpose was just paper," Emily whispered. "She believed that true wealth came from how much good you could do for others." Harold leaned forward earnestly, his voice taking on the gravity of a sacred trust. Your grandmother left very specific instructions about how this money should be used. She established a framework for what she called the Guardian Angel Foundation, an organization designed to help families in crisis situations, medical emergencies, housing disasters, educational needs. Any situation where good people find themselves overwhelmed by circumstances beyond their control. He pointed to a thick folder of documents. She wanted the help to be anonymous, given without expectation of recognition or gratitude. The goal is simply to restore hope to those who have lost it. Emily read through the foundation documents with growing amazement and humility. Her grandmother had thought of everything, from tax implications to distribution methods to ensuring the anonymity of recipients. She spent the last 5 years of her life planning this, Harold explained. She said she watched you work as a nurse, saw how you treated every patient like family, and knew that you were the only person she could trust with this responsibility. Emily felt the weight of her grandmother's faith in her, understanding that this wasn't just an inheritance, but a calling to continue the legacy of compassion that had defined their family for generations. "There's one more condition," Harold said, as Emily prepared to sign the foundation paperwork. "Your grandmother insisted that you continue living simply, that you not use this money to change your own lifestyle dramatically. She believed that understanding financial struggle would keep you connected to the people you'll be helping." Emily nodded without hesitation. She had never desired wealth for its own sake, and the idea of using her grandmother's sacrifice for personal luxury felt wrong. She wanted the foundation's first board member to be someone who understood both sides of need and abundance, Harold continued. Someone who would never forget what it feels like to count every penny. The only person Emily trusted with the complete truth was Grace, her closest friend and fellow nurse. In a quiet hospital break room, Emily explained the inheritance and her grandmother's vision for the foundation. Grace listened with growing amazement, her understanding of Emily's mysterious peace finally beginning to make sense. "So all this time, when I've been worrying about your finances, you've been secretly wealthy?" Grace asked incredulously. Emily shook her head firmly. "I'm not wealthy, Grace. I'm the steward of something that belongs to people who need it more than I ever could. The money isn't mine. It's just passing through my hands to reach the people Grandma wanted to help." Over the following months, Emily and Harold developed a system for identifying and helping families in crisis. They worked with hospitals, schools, and social service agencies to find people whose needs were genuine and whose situations were dire. Emily insisted on reading every case file personally, her nursing background helping her understand medical situations, while her own experience with financial hardship gave her insight into family dynamics. "Mrs. Rodriguez needs surgery but can't afford the deductible," she would say, or "the Johnson family is about to lose their home because of the father's cancer treatments." Each case became personal to Emily, each family a sacred trust. The first family Emily helped was the Washingtons, whose 6-year-old daughter needed expensive physical therapy after a car accident. Emily watched from across the street as Harold delivered the anonymous check that would cover all the child's treatments. The joy and relief on the parents' faces as they realized their daughter would get the help she needed brought Emily to tears. This was what her grandmother had envisioned, the restoration of hope in moments of despair. As she drove away, Emily felt her grandmother's presence so strongly it was as if Margaret was sitting beside her, smiling with approval at the good work that was beginning. Over the next 3 years, the Guardian Angel Foundation quietly helped hundreds of families. Single mothers whose children needed medical care, elderly couples facing foreclosure, students whose dreams of college seemed impossible due to financial constraints. Emily became intimately familiar with each story, each need, each moment when hope was restored through anonymous generosity. She maintained detailed records, not for tax purposes, but because each family mattered to her personally. Their thank you letters, addressed to whoever you are, filled several boxes in her apartment, reminders of the sacred work she was privileged to do in her grandmother's honor. Back in the present, as Emily reflected on the 3 years of foundation work, Grace often expressed concern about the secrecy surrounding Emily's true situation. Don't you ever want credit for all the good you do? Grace asked during one of their lunch conversations. Don't you want people to know who you really are? Emily smiled with the same mysterious peace that had puzzled Grace for years. The families we help don't need to know my name, Grace. They just need to know that someone cares enough to help when they have nowhere else to turn. Grandma taught me that the most powerful acts of love are often the ones nobody sees. As she spoke these words, Emily had no idea that her carefully guarded secret was about to be tested in the most personal way possible. The spring talent show at Riverside Elementary was in full swing when 8-year-old Lily suddenly stopped mid-song during her solo performance. Her sweet voice faltered as she clutched her chest, her face growing pale under the bright stage lights. The other children continued singing around her, unaware that something was terribly wrong. Emily, who was volunteering backstage, immediately noticed Lily's distress and rushed toward the stage. The little girl who had always been so full of energy and life looked fragile and frightened as she struggled to catch her breath. Parents in the audience began to murmur with concern as they realized one of the performers was in trouble. Emily's nursing instincts kicked in as she quickly but calmly approached Lily on the stage. "Sweetie, I need you to try to take slow, deep breaths for me," Emily said softly, kneeling beside the frightened child. Lily's small hand gripped Emily's arm tightly as she struggled to speak. "It hurts," she whispered, her blue eyes wide with fear. "My chest really hurts, and I can't breathe right." Emily felt Lily's rapid, irregular pulse and immediately knew this was serious. While maintaining her calm exterior to avoid frightening the child further, Emily's mind raced through possible cardiac conditions that could cause these symptoms in someone so young. Robert and Cassandra pushed through the crowd of concerned parents, their faces etched with terror as they saw their daughter collapsed on the stage. All of Cassandra's usual composure and superiority vanished in an instant, replaced by the raw panic of a mother whose child was in danger. "Lily! Oh God, Lily!" Cassandra cried out, her voice breaking with emotion. Robert's business confidence crumbled as he saw his little girl's pale, frightened face. The successful entrepreneur who commanded boardrooms felt completely helpless in the face of his daughter's medical emergency. Nothing in their world of wealth and privilege had prepared them for this moment of absolute vulnerability. Emily remained the picture of professional calm as she directed other volunteers to call 911 and clear space around Lily. "Sweetie, the paramedics are coming, and they're going to take really good care of you," she told Lily in soothing tones, stroking the child's curly hair. "I'm going to stay right here with you until they arrive, okay?" Lily nodded weakly, her trust in Emily absolute even in her frightened state. When the paramedics arrived, Emily efficiently communicated Lily's symptoms and vital signs, her medical knowledge proving invaluable in ensuring the child received immediate, appropriate care. Her presence provided the only stability in a moment of complete chaos. At Children's Hospital, Dr. Thompson's kind face was grave as he reviewed Lily's test results with growing concern. The pediatric cardiologist had seen many cases in his 20 years of practice, but this particular combination of symptoms in such a young child was especially troubling. "I need to run some additional tests," he told the anxious family gathered around Lily's hospital bed. "Her heart rhythm is irregular, and there are some concerning patterns on the EKG that suggest a congenital condition we may have missed in her earlier checkups." The sterile hospital room felt cold and frightening, filled with beeping monitors and medical equipment that seemed too large and intimidating for such a small patient. The following morning, Dr. Thompson called Robert and Cassandra into his office for a consultation that would change their lives forever. "Lily has a rare congenital heart defect called hypoplastic left heart syndrome with late-presenting complications," he explained gently, showing them detailed cardiac images on his computer screen. Essentially, the left side of her heart didn't develop properly when she was born. It's been compensating until now, but the stress on her system has reached a critical point. The medical terminology felt foreign and terrifying to parents who had never imagined their healthy, active daughter could be harboring such a serious condition. Cassandra gripped Robert's hand, as the reality of their daughter's situation began to sink in. There's a surgical procedure that can potentially correct this condition, Dr. Thompson continued, his voice carefully measured. It's called the Norwood procedure, followed by additional staged operations. However, it's extremely complex and expensive. We're looking at approximately $500,000 for the complete series of surgeries, and that doesn't include the extensive rehabilitation and follow-up care she'll need. The number hit Robert and Cassandra like a physical blow. Despite Robert's business success, their recent lifestyle expenses and some poor investments had left them financially vulnerable. The irony was devastating. They had spent years accumulating wealth and status symbols while failing to prepare for the one thing that truly mattered. Robert spent agonizing hours on the phone with their insurance company, only to receive devastating news. The procedure is considered experimental for cases like Lily's, the insurance representative explained coldly. We can cover basic cardiac care, but the specialized surgery Dr. Thompson is recommending isn't approved under your current policy. Robert felt his world crumbling as he realized that all his business acumen, all his financial success, meant nothing in the face of bureaucratic insurance policies. Meanwhile, Cassandra sat beside Lily's bed, watching their daughter struggle with oxygen tubes and heart monitors, feeling more helpless than she had ever felt in her privileged life. As the reality of their situation sank in, Cassandra's carefully constructed world of superiority and control completely collapsed. The woman who had spent months humiliating Emily for her modest lifestyle now found herself facing the terrifying possibility of losing her daughter due to their own financial limitations. "How is this possible?" she sobbed into Robert's shoulder. "We have everything, the house, the cars, the clothes, but we can't save our own child?" Robert held his family close, his own tears falling as he contemplated the unthinkable. All their material possessions suddenly seemed meaningless compared to their daughter's life hanging in the balance. Dr. Thompson's final words struck like a death sentence. "I need to be direct with you. Lily's condition is deteriorating rapidly. We have perhaps 1 week to secure funding and schedule the surgery, or we'll be looking at palliative care options." The phrase palliative care hung in the air like a curse, its meaning clear even to parents desperate to deny reality. Cassandra felt her knees buckle as she realized they had 7 days to find $500,000 or watch their daughter die. For the first time in her adult life, the woman who had always believed money could solve any problem found herself completely powerless, forced to confront the devastating irony that their pursuit of a wealthy lifestyle had left them unprepared for the one expense that truly mattered. The proud, arrogant woman who had spent months humiliating Emily was nowhere to be found as Cassandra approached her in the sterile hospital corridor. Her designer clothes were wrinkled from hours of sleeping in uncomfortable chairs, her perfect makeup smeared by countless tears, and her usual air of superiority had been completely stripped away by a mother's desperate love. "Emily," she said quietly, her voice hoarse from crying. I know I haven't been kind to you. I know I've said terrible things." She struggled to find words that could bridge the chasm of cruelty she had created between them. For the first time since Emily had known her, Cassandra looked genuinely human, vulnerable, frightened, and utterly broken by circumstances beyond her control. Emily's heart ached as she watched Cassandra struggle with her pride, knowing how difficult it must be for someone so accustomed to feeling superior to ask for help. "Cassandra, what matters right now is Lily," Emily said gently, her voice free of any trace of vindictiveness despite the months of humiliation she had endured. "Whatever has happened between us doesn't matter when a child's life is at stake." Her response revealed the depth of her character. Even facing the woman who had tried to make her life miserable, Emily's first instinct was compassion rather than revenge. She had been raised by a grandmother who believed that love was always the right response, even in the face of cruelty. "We don't have the money," Cassandra confessed, the words feeling like glass in her throat. "Robert's business, it's not as successful as we pretended. We've been living beyond our means for so long, trying to maintain an image, and now, when it really matters." Her voice broke completely as the full weight of their situation crashed down on her. All those expensive clothes, the jewelry, the vacations, none of it matters now. It was all meaningless, and I was such a fool to think it made me better than anyone else. The woman who had once flaunted her wealth now realized that her materialistic lifestyle had actually left her family vulnerable when they needed security most. Every luxury purchase had been money that could have saved her daughter's life. In a moment that would have been unimaginable weeks earlier, Cassandra fell to her knees in front of Emily, her pride completely shattered by maternal desperation. "Please," she sobbed, clutching Emily's hands. "I know I don't deserve your help. I know I've been cruel and horrible to you. But Lily, she loves you so much. She asks for you every day." Tears streamed down her face as she abandoned every shred of dignity in favor of her daughter's life. "I don't know anyone else to ask. Everyone in our social circle, they're all image and no substance, just like I was. You're the only person I know who actually cares about helping people rather than just talking about it." The reversal was complete. The woman who had once looked down on Emily was now literally beneath her, begging for the very compassion she had mocked. Emily gently helped Cassandra to her feet, her heart breaking for the broken woman before her. Despite everything Cassandra had done, Emily couldn't bear to see another mother in such agony. "Cassandra, please don't kneel," she said softly. "We're both mothers at heart, and no mother should have to beg for her child's life." Her words carried no judgment, only the deep understanding of someone who had also lost a child and knew the devastating pain that came with that loss. "Let me think about this. There might be possibilities. People who could help." Emily's mind was already racing, but she knew she needed time to process the enormity of what Cassandra was asking and what it would mean to reveal her secret. That evening, Emily sat alone in the hospital chapel, struggling with the most difficult decision of her life. The small, quiet space provided sanctuary from the chaos of the medical emergency unfolding upstairs. "Grandma," she whispered to the empty pews, "I need your guidance. You always said the foundation was for people who had nowhere else to turn, but this is different. This is personal." She thought about Lily's innocent face, the way the little girl had immediately trusted her, and how she had become genuinely attached to the child despite the complicated circumstances. The decision to help would mean revealing her secret, changing everything about her carefully constructed simple life, and potentially opening herself up to judgment and misunderstanding from everyone who knew her. Grace found Emily in the hospital cafeteria later that night, staring blankly at an untouched cup of coffee. "I know what you're thinking," Grace said quietly, sliding into the seat across from her best friend. "And I know what your grandmother would say, too." Emily looked up with eyes full of tears and uncertainty. "This is exactly why she left you that money. Not for the people who are easy to love, but for moments like this when love requires sacrifice." Grace reached across the table and squeezed Emily's hand. "That little girl doesn't know about your past with her stepmother. All she knows is that you care about her, and right now, you have the power to save her life. How is that not exactly what your grandmother envisioned?" Emily called Harold from the privacy of an empty hospital conference room, her voice steady despite the emotional turmoil she was experiencing. "Harold, I need to use foundation funds for an emergency case," she said without preamble. "It's complicated. The family has a personal connection to me, and they have no idea about the foundation or my involvement with it." Harold listened quietly as Emily explained the situation, the ethical dilemmas involved, and her ultimate conclusion that this was exactly the kind of case her grandmother had envisioned. "Your grandmother always said that the hardest gifts to give are often the most important ones," Harold replied thoughtfully. "If you're certain this is right, then we'll make it happen. The foundation exists to restore hope, regardless of the personal cost to you." Emily stood in the doorway of Lily's hospital room, watching the little girl sleep peacefully despite the oxygen tubes and heart monitors surrounding her bed. The child's face was pale but serene, completely trusting that the adults in her life would find a way to make everything better. "I can't let her suffer because of the complicated history between the adults," Emily whispered to herself. "She's innocent in all of this, and she deserves every chance at life." Making her final decision, Emily felt a profound sense of peace wash over her, as if her grandmother's spirit was confirming that this was indeed the right choice. The money had always belonged to people who needed it most, and right now, nobody needed it more than this sleeping child who had somehow found her way into Emily's heart. The next morning, Emily approached Dr. Thompson with the same calm professionalism she brought to all her nursing duties, but her heart was pounding with the magnitude of what she was about to do. "Doctor, I need to speak with you about Lily's case," she said quietly, ensuring they were away from the family's hearing. "I have information about a potential funding source for her surgery, an anonymous benefactor who wishes to cover all medical expenses." Dr. Thompson's eyebrows raised in surprise, but his years of experience had taught him not to question medical miracles when they appeared. "Are you certain this funding is legitimate and available immediately?" he asked. Emily nodded, knowing that with one phone call to Harold, she was about to change not only Lily's life, but her own forever. "The donor wants complete anonymity, but the fund will be available within 24 hours. Dr. Thompson entered Lily's hospital room with news that seemed too good to be true. "I have extraordinary news," he announced to the stunned family. "An anonymous benefactor has come forward to cover all of Lily's medical expenses, the surgery, the rehabilitation, everything. The funds have been verified and will be available immediately." Cassandra's legs gave out as she sank into the bedside chair, overwhelmed by relief so profound it felt like resurrection. Robert stood frozen, unable to process how their nightmare had suddenly transformed into a miracle. "Who would do something like this?" Cassandra whispered through her tears. "We don't know anyone with that kind of money who would. Her voice trailed off as the magnitude of this anonymous gift began to sink in. "Please, Dr. Thompson, you have to tell me who this person is," Cassandra pleaded, gripping the doctor's arm. "I need to thank them. I need to understand why someone would save my daughter's life without even knowing us." Her desperation to identify their mysterious savior was overwhelming. After spending months believing that money and status defined a person's worth, she couldn't comprehend such extraordinary generosity from an unknown source. Dr. Thompson shook his head firmly. The donor was very specific about maintaining complete anonymity. "All I can tell you is that they learned about Lily's case and felt compelled to help. Sometimes miracles come from the most unexpected places." His words only intensified Cassandra's need to understand who possessed both the means and the heart to save a stranger's child. Emily stood quietly in the hospital corridor, her heart pounding as she watched Cassandra's emotional reaction to the news. She had expected to feel relief, but instead she felt a growing knot of anxiety as she realized that Cassandra would not simply accept this gift without questions. "Emily," Cassandra called out, practically running toward her. "Did you hear? Someone is paying for Lily's surgery." An anonymous donor just appeared out of nowhere and saved her life. The irony was almost unbearable. Cassandra was sharing her joy with the very person responsible for the miracle, completely unaware of the truth. Emily managed a smile, her voice carefully controlled. "That's wonderful news, Cassandra. Lily is going to be okay." But even as she spoke, Emily could see the wheels turning in Cassandra's mind. "Emily, you work in hospitals," Cassandra said, her voice taking on an urgent tone. "You must have connections, people who know about these kinds of situations. Do you have any idea who could have done this?" Her eyes searched Emily's face intently, looking for any clue that might reveal the identity of their mysterious savior. "The timing is so perfect, almost like this person knew exactly what was happening with Lily. And the amount, it's exactly what we needed, down to the penny." Emily felt her carefully constructed facade beginning to crack under Cassandra's intense scrutiny. "Sometimes these charitable organizations monitor hospital cases," she said carefully. "There are people who specifically look for children who need help." But her explanation only seemed to fuel Cassandra's curiosity rather than satisfy it. A look of dawning realization began to cross Cassandra's features as she studied Emily's face more intently. "Wait," she said slowly, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Yesterday, I was begging everyone for help, and today an anonymous donor appears?" Emily, You were the only person I told about our exact financial situation. You were the only one who knew precisely how much we needed. Her green eyes widened as impossible pieces began falling into place. And you've always been so calm about money, so at peace despite apparently struggling financially. Grace made that comment about people discovering who you really are. Cassandra's voice grew stronger as her suspicion transformed into certainty. My God, Emily, it was you, wasn't it? You're the anonymous donor. Emily felt the weight of 3 years of secrecy pressing down on her as Cassandra's accusation hung in the air between them. She could see that denial was pointless. Cassandra had connected too many dots, and the truth was written across Emily's face despite her attempts to maintain composure. Emily began, then stopped, realizing that this moment had been inevitable from the second she decided to help. Yes, she said quietly, her voice barely audible in the busy hospital corridor. Yes, it was me. The simple admission felt like releasing a breath she had been holding for years. Cassandra staggered backward, as if physically struck, her hand covering her mouth in shock as the full implications of Emily's revelation began to dawn on her. But how? Cassandra whispered, her mind reeling as everything she thought she knew about Emily crumbled around her. You're a nurse. You live in that tiny apartment. You take the bus to work. How could you possibly have $500,000? Emily took a deep breath, knowing that there was no going back now. 3 years ago, I inherited money from my grandmother, she explained quietly. A lot of money, but she left it with specific instructions. It was meant to help families in crisis, anonymously. I created a foundation called Guardian Angel to carry out her wishes. Cassandra's legs felt weak as she processed this information. How much money? She asked faintly. $15 million, Emily replied. But it's not mine, Cassandra. It belongs to people who need it more than I ever could. The full weight of her behavior over the past months crashed down on Cassandra like a physical blow. Oh my God, she sobbed, covering her face with her hands. All those times I humiliated you, all those horrible things I said about your simple life, your work, your clothes, and you were secretly wealthy all along. You could have shut me up with a single word, could have made me look like a fool, but you never did. Her voice broke completely as she realized the true character of the woman she had tormented. And even after everything I did to you, you still saved my daughter's life. You used your own money to help the child of someone who had been nothing but cruel to you. The contrast between her own behavior and Emily's grace was so stark, it was almost unbearable to confront. Cassandra, you were protecting your family and the life you had built, Emily said with genuine compassion, refusing to let the other woman drown in guilt. I understood your fear, even when it hurt. And Lily, she's innocent in all of this. She's a beautiful child who deserves every chance at life. Emily's voice grew stronger as she explained her grandmother's philosophy. My grandmother taught me that the hardest people to love are often the ones who need love the most. She said that true wealth isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by what you give away when no one is watching. Cassandra looked up through her tears, seeing Emily clearly for perhaps the first time. You've been helping families all along, haven't you? That's why you always seem so at peace, so content with so little. You were living your purpose. 2 weeks later, Lily was recovering beautifully from her surgery, her heart finally beating strong and steady. As Emily sat beside her hospital bed, reading a story, Cassandra watched from the doorway with tears of gratitude and transformed understanding. The little girl had no idea that the woman reading to her had saved her life. To Lily, Emily was simply the kind nurse who always made her feel better and told the best stories. Will you teach me to help other kids like me? Lily asked Emily innocently. When I get better, I want to help other children who are scared. Emily's eyes met Cassandra's across the room, and in that moment, both women understood that this experience had created something beautiful from something painful. Cassandra stepped into the room, no longer the arrogant socialite who had tormented Emily, but a woman humbled by grace and ready to learn what it truly meant to serve others with love. How can you ever forgive me after everything I've done? Cassandra asked through her tears, her voice breaking with the weight of months of cruelty that now seemed unforgivable in light of Emily's extraordinary grace. She knelt beside Emily's chair in Lily's hospital room, completely humbled by the realization that the woman she had tormented had not only endured her attacks with dignity, but had ultimately saved her daughter's life. "I was so horrible to you, Emily. I made fun of your work, your clothes, your life. And all along you were living with more purpose and meaning than I ever had. How do you find it in your heart to forgive someone like me?" The question hung in the air, heavy with genuine remorse and the desperate hope for redemption that could only come from someone who had finally seen themselves clearly in the mirror of another's grace. Emily gently helped Cassandra to her feet, her warm hazel eyes filled with the same compassion she had shown to countless patients over the years. "Cassandra, forgiveness isn't about what you deserve," she said softly, her voice carrying the wisdom her grandmother had instilled in her years ago. "It's about what love chooses to give freely. You are acting out of fear of not being enough, fear of not having control, fear of losing what you thought defined you. I understand that fear because I've felt it too." She paused, looking toward Lily, who was sleeping peacefully in her hospital bed. "Besides, seeing you fight for your daughter, seeing how much you love her, that showed me who you really are beneath all the defensiveness. That's the person I choose to forgive and believe in." Her words carried the healing power of unconditional grace, offering redemption without conditions or requirements for worthiness. "I want to change," Cassandra said with fierce determination, wiping away her tears. "I want to be better, to live like you do, with purpose instead of just accumulating things that don't matter. I've spent so much time and energy trying to prove I was superior to others, when I should have been focusing on actually becoming someone worth respecting." She looked directly into Emily's eyes, her voice growing stronger with resolve. "I want to help with your foundation. I want to learn how to serve others the way you do, how to find meaning in giving rather than taking. I know I don't deserve a second chance, but if you'll have me, I want to spend the rest of my life making up for the person I used to be. Lily almost died because of my priorities, and I never want to be that shallow again." The transformation in her voice was remarkable. Gone was the condescending tone that had characterized her speech for months, replaced by genuine humility and sincere desire for redemption. Emily's face lit up as she explained the true mission of the Guardian Angel Foundation, her passion for the work evident in every word. "It's not about the money, Cassandra. It's about seeing people, really seeing them, in their moments of greatest need and responding with love." She pulled out her phone and showed Cassandra photos of some of the families they had helped. "This is Maria, whose cancer treatments were bankrupting her family. This is James, who was about to lose his house after his wife's accident. And this is little Sophia, who needed surgery just like Lily did." Each photo told a story of hope restored, of families given second chances. "The foundation works because it operates on my grandmother's principle, that the most powerful gifts are the ones given without expectation of recognition or return. When you help someone anonymously, it's pure love in action." Cassandra listened with growing wonder, beginning to understand how Emily had found such deep contentment in what she had previously dismissed as a simple life. Robert entered the hospital room, carrying coffee for everyone, his usual confident demeanor replaced by something much more humble and thoughtful. The successful businessman who had once been too focused on material success to appreciate Emily's character now looked at his ex-wife with newfound respect and genuine admiration. "Emily," he said quietly, setting down the coffee cups, "I owe you an apology that's years overdue. I was so obsessed with financial success that I lost sight of what really mattered. Watching you with Lily, seeing what you've done for our family, I realize now that you were always the successful one. You found a way to live that actually mattered." His words carried the weight of hard-earned wisdom, the understanding that had come from almost losing what he truly valued most while chasing things that ultimately meant nothing. "Robert, we were both doing the best we could with who we were at the time," Emily replied with characteristic grace, showing no trace of bitterness or resentment. "Our divorce was painful, but it led us both to where we needed to be. You built a successful business and became the father Lily needed. I found my purpose through the foundation and learned what my grandmother was trying to teach me about true wealth. She looked between Robert and Cassandra with genuine warmth. And now we're all here together when Lily needs us most. Maybe that's how healing really works. Not by erasing the past, but by letting it teach us how to love better in the present. Cassandra watched this exchange with amazement, seeing how Emily had transformed what could have been an awkward and painful conversation into an opportunity for healing and growth. Lily stirred in her hospital bed and opened her eyes to see her father, Cassandra, and Emily all sitting together peacefully, talking quietly and even laughing softly. The 8-year-old's face lit up with pure joy at this unexpected sight. "Are you all friends now?" she asked with the innocent directness that only children possess. "I was hoping you could all be friends because I love all of you." Her simple words carried profound truth. In her innocent heart, there was room for everyone she cared about, and she couldn't understand why the adults had made things so complicated. "We're learning how to be better friends, sweetheart," Emily said gently, stroking Lily's curly hair. "Sometimes grown-ups need time to figure out what's really important, and you helped us remember." Lily beamed with satisfaction, pleased that her wish for harmony among the people she loved was finally coming true. 3 months later, Cassandra had become Emily's most dedicated partner in the Guardian Angel Foundation. The woman who had once spent her days shopping and planning social events now spent her time reviewing cases of families in need, coordinating anonymous donations, and learning the delicate art of helping others while preserving their dignity. "I never realized how much work goes into truly helping people," Cassandra said as she reviewed a case file about a family facing foreclosure. "It's not just about writing a check. It's about understanding their situation, finding the right kind of help, and making sure they never feel ashamed for needing assistance." Emily smiled as she watched Cassandra's transformation, seeing how the woman's natural intelligence and organizational skills had found their proper purpose in service to others rather than self-aggrandizement. Despite having Cassandra as a partner in the foundation's growing impact, Emily continued to live in her modest apartment, take the bus to work, and find joy in simple pleasures. Cassandra had initially suggested that Emily should live like the wealthy woman she actually is, but Emily had gently explained that her simple lifestyle was a choice, not a limitation. "My grandmother taught me that when you already have everything you need to be happy, acquiring more just becomes a distraction," Emily explained as they organized thank you letters from families they had helped. "I have meaningful work, people I love, and the ability to help others. What else could I possibly need?" Cassandra was slowly learning to see wealth through Emily's eyes, understanding that abundance could be measured in ways that had nothing to do with bank account balances or material possessions. 6 months after Lily's surgery, the little girl was completely recovered and more vibrant than ever, her heart strong and her spirit even stronger. Emily and Cassandra watched from a park bench as Lily played with other children, including several kids whose families had been helped by the Guardian Angel Foundation. "She wants to be a nurse when she grows up," Cassandra said with a smile. "Just like Emily. She says she wants to help sick children feel better." Emily's eyes filled with happy tears as she watched the child who had brought them all together playing with such joy and energy. The foundation continued its quiet work of restoring hope to families in crisis, now with Cassandra as a devoted advocate for the mission. Together, they had learned that the most beautiful transformations often came not from acquiring more, but from discovering the profound joy that comes from giving love away. Their story had become a testament to the power of forgiveness, the possibility of redemption, and the truth that authentic wealth could only be measured by the depth of one's compassion for others. What an incredible journey of transformation and forgiveness we've witnessed together. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever experienced the power of second chances in your own life? Sometimes the people who challenge us most can become our greatest teachers about grace and compassion. Drop a comment sharing where you're watching from and what this story meant to you. If Emily and Cassandra's journey touched your heart, please give this video a like and subscribe for more inspiring stories that remind us love truly can conquer all.